Love you, Linda. Love you.
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
And hey, Justice Serve TV is on the air. Michael Bryant here. Hello, Linda Kenney Baden. How are you?
Good evening, Michael Bryant. I just say, I find that this is going to be a sad day, but one that's also going to be very important because of the guests we have and because of what we're going to be talking about in our rip and reads that we're going to give more attention to later on. But I'm not smiling tonight, as you notice. Very unusual for me. Yeah, very unusual.
Care to share?
Yeah, I think this whole, and we'll do it with Rip and Read, I think this whole young woman who got killed on the train is all of us.
It's unbelievable. And now the new video that has come out, because most folks have stopped the video when this Ukrainian refugee is about to be stabbed by this guy on the train who has 14 convictions or whatever. But the video that has been released since, that is after the stabbing, we'll get into all of that. But I first should say I apologize. We were going to have the top 5 pieces of evidence that could, should, might lead to the arrest of Harvey Adelson, as we continue to cover how the Adelsons turn on one another. But we had at the last minute the opportunity to have a very important guest on. Stephen Webster will be here very soon. And so we'll do the rip and read, and then we'll do the Harvey thing tomorrow, right? We'll do that tomorrow. So,
That's
okay. Okay, you've already suggested the one story. If you want to do a couple of lines on that before you move on, we're going to get
Her name was Irina Zaruska. She was a Ukrainian refugee. She came here. She emigrated, and I have this information from her obituary, which was written by her mother and her sisters. She emigrated here in August 2022 from Ukraine with her mother, her sister, and her brother to escape the war. She was on the blue line on the light train, as they call it down there in North Carolina, right? And she was just sitting minding her own business. A very, we could say troubled, we could say evil, we could say demonic, we could say horrible, we could say criminal. I don't have enough words to describe him. Carlos Dewan enters the train, proceeds to stab her in the neck area. It's hard to see. I didn't watch the video initially, as you said, but then the U.S. attorney today, he's not only been arrested, but the U.S. attorney has also decided to file a complaint against him, and they're going to look for more charges there. This is a complaint involving the death on rail. It's a terrorism complaint, really. Death on light rail, which there's a federal statute for. And with the video we saw today that was released because of this was what happened afterwards. And quite frankly, what I'm really angry about, and we're going to get into it more this week, we're going to do a segment on it that we'll play later in this week. We'll tape that tomorrow. Was the fact that there's at least 4 people around her. She bled to death. I mean, she's wide awake.
She bled out in front of these people as they watched. They looked over. When it was happening, apparently they, recoiled slightly, and then the killer walks off the train, and this poor woman is just, she doesn't really quite know what's happening, and you can see a point where her eyes lock with his, which is chilling, and she basically bleeds out in front of these people from 3 stab wounds to the neck. They do nothing.
This is a Kitty Genovese. It's if you all look at this case back a long time ago in the 50s in New York City, look up Kitty Genovese. We'll talk about it because that was the case in the last century. I think this is going to be the case in this century, that people do nothing. There it was preventing her from getting killed. Here it was preventing her from dying. But we'll do more on this case. But I just
where's Daniel Penny? Hello, paging Daniel Penny.
Penny, right? Let's we'd like to. We're going to try to reach out and find Daniel Penny or one of the jurors on the case, because that's what this was all about, wasn't it?
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, I was in the courtroom for his trial, and man, people were lined up on each side of the argument. It happened in Manhattan, a little more liberal area, folks wondering why he wouldn't get convicted. He was not, for trying to help out and perhaps prevent a similar incident. We'll never know on the train in the Manhattan subway.
Yeah.
So
we'll
crazy.
talk about that later this week.
Yes.
And then we have another rip and read. You want to do this one? You want me?
I don't know. What do you got? What do you got?
Okay,
I got notes here somewhere.
Well, I know you've been working very hard on getting tonight's episode up. YNW Bortland trial. He pleaded guilty, right? He was charged with Melly, right? YNW Melly.
I remember when we covered this on Law and Crime, and there was
right.
Remember that his real name is Cortland, but because he's a blood, he goes by Bortland. It was a whole weird code that I remember. I barely got a grasp of by the time they finished the case. But that was the key. If you're a blood, then B replaces the first letter of your name. That's
right, Cortland. Right, that's replaces the first letter of his name. Cortland Henry is his full name. Yeah, we learned that on Law and Crime when we covered it. All right. Well, he got the deal of the day, the deal of the week, the deal of the century. He was indicted for crimes that could have given him a prison sentence for life, plus. I think it was around 75 years, right? And he was allowed to plead today. His attorneys did such an incredible job. No contest after the fact, and as an accessory after the fact, and witness tampering. 10 years in prison. He's already served almost 5 in prison, so he gets credit for time served. And then after he gets out, he's got 6 years of probation. And he was smiling from ear to ear. The judge said when he accepted the no contest plea, which the judge turns into a guilty plea to be able to sentence him. I don't know how your attorneys did it, but we're going to have our insider in the courtroom, a friend of mine, Bryson Boom Paul, on. We're going to be interviewing him tomorrow. Probably will pre-tape it, and then we'll be running a segment on that as to what's the effect on the Melly trial that this is going to have, because that's talked about years of all sorts of problems and things that have been going on there. Prosecutors moved out, attorneys under investigation, blah blah
conflicts
blah.
Here and
yeah. So we'll be having more on that segment sometime this week. We'll be posting that on Justice Served TV with Bryson Boom Paul.
All right. Okay, we're done. Oh, no, wait, we're not done. We do have just a little bit of stuff.
As the Adelsons turn on one another.
Well, the soap opera continues, and we are so lucky today to have with us somebody that is in a unique position in this whole Adelson storyline, somebody that represents the guy we want to remember. This is not the Adelson story. It is the Dan Markell story. And nobody knows that better, has that insight better than Mr. Stephen Webster, who joins us now from Tallahassee. Stephen, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for keeping Dan's memory alive and keeping the story alive. I appreciate it.
You know, I want to ask just so folks who may not be familiar with your relationship to this story, how did you get involved with Dan Markell? Are you a family law guy by trade? Linda and I'll tell you, Linda and I have talked about the family law business. We both have done just enough of it to say, I can't do that. I can't. And you know, this case is clearly an extreme example, but it's a piece of our, you know, ultimate decision. You know, it gets too much. It's just too much. How did you get involved?
Yes, family law is not the area that I've really wanted to focus my practice in. I originally worked for a white collar criminal defense lawyer who was a member of the local bar association, and he would get pro bono cases referred to him. And then he was nice enough to let me handle all those pro bono cases for him. So I started doing family law there. I actually booked a class in law school, which was the only time that happened for me. And I actually got a scholarship for it. But I know I'm fighting with the children involved and all that. And you really do see people at their worst in family law. And it's just not the way I want to live my day-to-day existence. But I've done, you know, I'll still help friends out if it's an agreed upon divorce. I've done, you know, some adoptions, which are rewarding. I enjoyed those. But yeah, no, family law is not my shtick, but I had just started my firm, and a friend of mine, I think he was looking out for me. He was trying to, you know, send some cases to me, and he called me and said that he had a case that he thought I could really help the client out on. He said, you know, it's a law professor, it's a family law case. And I told him, I said, well, I don't really do family law. And he said, well, it doesn't really matter. It's not really family law at this point. It's kind of more like almost criminal in nature, because they're accusing each other of contempt and of fraud. And he said, and to the extent that there's family law issues that you need to come up to speed on, your client's a law professor and he'll teach you everything you need to know. And I said, well, I guess that does make sense. And, you know, obviously having a chance to just starting my firm to represent a law professor like that, you know, could obviously help push my firm forward and bring some attention to my firm. So I agreed to meet with him, and I read all of the papers that had been filed between the parties, and I had concluded that I did not want to get involved because the prospect of representing a law professor who could ultimately be held in contempt of court, or even proving that another law professor, Wendy, committed fraud on the court and could be held in contempt of court. There could just be significant ramifications from that, going either way. And the stress that I would have probably shouldered in trying to navigate that just didn't seem like it would be worth it to me. So I kind of made my mind up I was not going to take the case, but I told Dan I would meet with him. So I met with him to have coffee, and he just changed my mind. I liked him. He wasn't vindictive. He wasn't foaming at the mouth. And he cracked jokes. I mean, we just had a very normal conversation, which is also kind of weird, for a law professor. You guys probably can attest. You're talking about some bright people that sometimes are eccentric, and definitely a little bit different, a little quirky. Not Dan. I mean, he was very kind of down to earth, like just a normal guy. And after talking to him, I realized that it wasn't about money for Dan at all. It was solely about the children and trying to protect his relationship with the children, and to the extent that he could, increase his access to the children. And when I realized that's the fight that I was fighting, I was like, you know what, I can get behind that. And he told me that, Donna had, was saying he was stupid and saying, bad things about him to the children. So it was enough to really kind of get me fired up. And once I get fired up, then that's normally when I'm in a case.
And just so I should mention, it's Webster and Batista is your firm, right? Baptiste. Yes, Louis Baptiste, who Dan introduced me to. Oh, okay. Interesting.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's really incredible. But as you said, I think I had one pro bono assigned case by the court, an adoption case. And there, when they are adopted, everyone is just so happy, and it's so wonderful, and it's part of family law that's terrific. So when you talk about you were not only just intrigued but smitten, I guess, by this gentleman who just wanted to have his kids understand his kids, that really kind of goes with your empathy that you had along with the adoption, because that type of thing is what you see, and that's what you want to help people in, I think.
Yeah, the adoptions are powerful. My first one, the judge did a remarkable job. It was a step parent that was adopting a young lady whose mom was like out of the picture forever. It was actually a bailiff, and it was his daughter. And man, the judge, like Judge Fleury, he basically brought the young lady up and he said, "Do you understand how special you are? Like, she wants." Yeah, I'm gonna start crying if I talk about it. So I got
no. That's you should, because I think people, we all think family law, and that's people should know that there's certain parts of family law such as this that will make you cry, right? That's what
there wasn't a dry eye in that courtroom that day. I promise you. And I can't tell the story without crying. I mean, it was that powerful. So that was beautiful, and I enjoyed that. But yeah, generally speaking, family law is just the worst, and yeah.
I know you have a construction background. I thought, because I've done construction defect law, I thought you might have gotten into some of that. Do you handle any of that stuff?
I represent some construction companies in general and different things. I've done some kind of defect work, third-party beneficiary defect kind of work. Sure. I provide corporate counsel to a couple of the companies that I used to work with way back in the day. So I do some of that. It's honestly, I don't know. I need a little, I get bored if I do the same thing over and over again. I have to be trying to learn something new, doing something new. So I kind of have a varied practice just because of that.
Yeah, of course. So in this particular case, you had no idea what you were getting involved with, I'm sure. And now, in retrospect, what's that?
Certainly not this.
Yeah, of course. So give us your initial impressions on Wendy Adelson and the Adelson family as you were getting to know Dan and the issues he was dealing with.
Well, when I was reading the papers the night before, all the filings, I kind of concluded that, Wendy was pretty self-interested, and that it really was about money for her. When I met with Dan, he made it clear to me just how kind of obnoxious Donna was. and how dangerous Donna was. Like, I mean, I legitimately didn't see her like a physical danger or threat, but I absolutely saw Donna as a threat to the relationship that Dan had with his children. And so, you know, the papers were annoying, frankly. And that was one of my first concerns. I was like, you know, at some point you just make the judge despise you when you're kind of bombarding them with filings and filings. And, you know, at some point you need to like cut the wheat from the chaff, separate the wheat from the chaff, and like focus on what really matters. So that was my primary concern was, can I get Dan to do that and make sure that we don't fall back into that pattern of just filing after filing, and that we could hopefully reach an agreement, because I got the distinct impression that the lawyers were drafting, that the litigants were drafting many of the papers, certainly Dan. I mean, I felt like Dan was drafting a lot of those and his lawyer was fine with signing them. I just don't want to practice that way. Tallahassee's a small legal community, especially in the circuit court, you know, and the judges talk. And I don't want the judges going to lunch and saying, you know, that's Stephen Webster. I mean, he just practices in a really offensive way. So I care a lot about that, because when I go in front of them, I want to hopefully know that they're going to treat me fair. So
yeah. As attorneys, all you've got is your reputation. That's it.
Yeah. And speaking about value and reputations, we'll talk about Linda Bailey in a bit, but you said that when you first met with Dan, he made it clear to you that how he felt that Donna was dangerous. How so? In a physical way, or dangerous to his relationship with his children?
He just made it clear to me that she was destined to alienate him from his children. And, you know, parental alienation is something that obviously gets a lot of focus in family law courts. And he had some solid examples for me already, but I think what he kind of conveyed to me was that it was going to be a pattern that was going to persist, unless something happened. And so that was really kind of where I was trying to line up my fight, was on the alienation, because I felt like that was the most important issue for Dan. It was. And, you know, I felt like that it did somebody needed to intervene. And at the time, I was naive enough to think that certainly these well-to-do, sophisticated people in South Florida, if a circuit court judge looks at them sternly and reads them the riot act, they're going to course correct and change their behavior. Like now, I don't think that would have impacted them at all. But
yeah, I do criminal law a lot, and I had a client, very well-to-do client, very good client, terrific client, was arrested on a false charge where the mother put the daughter up to saying something that was untrue, and of course the prosecutor saw right through it and dropped it before it even went to grand jury. It wasn't, you didn't have to go that far. But that's what we see, and that's why I decided I didn't want to do family law. Did he give you any specifics or that you can relay as to what he thought was probably one of the most egregious situations of Donna destined to commit parental alienation and get the kids away from him?
She had, on one of the Skype calls, I can't remember which one of the sons had said, "Grandma said Daddy's stupid." And he had heard Donna off camera, he told me, say stupid's on the phone when he had called one time. And he was just convinced that was going to persist, and it was an ongoing pattern nonstop. And we all know now it almost certainly was, you know, it was going to be. So that was just it. And you know, that kind of stuff eventually just can wear on a child. And Wendy wasn't giving him his right of first refusal nights, and she was letting Donna like keep the kids all the time. And so, you know, Danny and I think both thought, and like I said, naively, that if we could convince the judge that kind of behavior was occurring, that the judge would figure out a way to put a stop to it.
Yeah, and you know, who knows what's being said that you weren't really learning about. I mean, who knows? And on the right of first refusal, for those who don't understand how that context in family law, it's if one parent has a conflict, you should go to the other parent first before farming the kids out to somebody else. And apparently that wasn't happening. So let's jump to, and you mentioned this in some of your early remarks there about what Wendy might have been doing that was going to cause issues for you and made you kind of want to stay away from the case. And fraud was an issue. A huge issue, as it turned out. Tell us about what was really in the offing on or about the day that Dan Markell was killed.
So Dan had told me that meeting, and he had the proof. He had documents to back it up that Wendy had not disclosed two bank accounts, and some other personal property, diamonds and things like that, and that she didn't disclose those on her financial affidavits. And those financial affidavits are critical. I mean, it's the parties are swearing and affirming to the court what the marital assets are, so that the court can fairly divide those assets ultimately. So, I mean, it's a very critical filing, and it's not one that you can just kind of half-ass, for lack of a better term. And so he had dead bang proof, and I'm sorry I said that, it was a bad expression, that Wendy, had in fact committed fraud on the court. And he had already kind of laid that out in a motion for contempt before he asked me to get on board. But he had the documents. And so I told him what we need to do is we need to send over requests for admissions, which is a discovery device that you can force the other party, compel the other party to admit or deny certain allegations. And I said, we need to lay out all the allegations that are material to the fraud, and to some of the other issues that he was taking in front of the court, like the alienation, and ask her to admit or deny those things as either being true or false. And no matter which way she went, I didn't care, because if she denied it, I was going to have proof that she committed another fraud on the court. And if she admitted it, then I was going to have proof that she committed a fraud on the court. So it literally didn't, as a lawyer, you always love it when you can put somebody in a position where you don't even care how they respond. Either way they go, damned if they do and damned if they don't. And so that was the position we were going to put her in. And I told Dan, I said, but look, I mean, going back to our initial conversation about not wanting to do family law, I said, this could have, serious ramifications for Wendy's professional licensure and her job or work, profession in general. I said, if we have to do this in order to make sure that you're protected and your positions are advanced, then so be it. I'm good for it if we have to. But I feel like this is something that is so significant that I should go meet with her lawyer, who I knew, and just at least try to talk to him and see if there was some old-fashioned way that we could figure out to bring this case to a close, that wouldn't just involve, full-fledged thermonuclear war, because that's where we were heading. That's where I was heading. That's why my friend referred him to me, because I'm good for that. I can't tap dance. I can't paint, but for whatever reason, God thought that I should have these certain skills, and the skill set I have is I'm pretty ruthless and vicious and tireless in court and in defending people or fighting for people. So, I met with her lawyer rather, and he said,
well, can I just interrupt you and ask you when that was in relation to his death, his murder? Do you know?
It was June 24th, 2014.
Okay.
And I went to his office, and he's a very prominent lawyer, highly regarded. And I just told him, I said, look, Jimmy, I don't like where this is headed. If we have to go there, we have to go there. But I'm going to file something on July 18th that I really feel like once I file it, the horse is going to be out of the barn and there's not going to be any going back. And I really believe that ultimately it's going to have dire consequences for your client, Jimmy. And I knew him. I'd worked with him before. When I mentioned that white collar criminal defense lawyer I worked for, he had worked on cases with us mutually, and I knew him. And he's a different guy in the courtroom. He's one of those people in the courtroom. He kind of comes off like all shucksy, all folksy.
Got the folksy thing, yeah.
Yeah, and he does it very well. I mean, he defended prominent politicians who were indicted and acquitted them. I mean, the guy's good. But when you're in the office preparing for trial, that's not how he is. And so he was doing that all shucks thing to me and the folksy thing. And I was like, okay, I mean, I'm wasting my time here, but so be it. I did what I wanted to do. My conscience is clear. And I literally said that to him. I got up. I said, okay, thank you for your time. And I walked to the door, and when I had the doorknob in my hand for his office door, and he said, Stephen. And it was the first time he wasn't like all shucks at me. And I looked back over my shoulder, and he said, I know what you're trying to do, and I appreciate it. And I said, well, thank you, Jimmy. I said, look, if we can find a way to stop this, great. And if we can't, then that's fine too. I said, but my conscience is clear. because I feel like I came here and did what I felt like I had to do. And I said, but I'm filing, what I'm going to file is on July 18th. So your client has until then to try to reach back out to me and see if we can get a dialogue going.
Yeah.
And then they never reached back out. And so I was working
What were the motions, Stephen, exactly? Did you tell him? Or?
It wasn't really a motion. It was just a request for admission. It's a document that you send.
It's a request for admissions. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
And so we had 24 of them. Dan had added some, and I was probably going to take some out. And we worked on those. I started working on them like the week before. And on Thursday before the murder, I really kind of finalized my draft, sent it to Dan. He had sent it back to me with some proposed changes and additions, really. And then I had highlighted those and kind of sent them back to him and said, we need to discuss these tomorrow. And so we agreed we were going to talk Friday morning, the day of the murder. And I was traveling and I was in the central time zone with my children. And he called me. It was at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And as we had arranged, but my children were jumping on the bed. It was crazy. And I said, Dan, I can't do this right now, man. Let me get the children fed. Let me get them in the truck and the car. Let's get a movie on. They'll be chilling. And then I can get on the phone with you. And so I told him that I would call him back at, I believe it was 10 Central, 11 Eastern, if I'm correct. I can't ever remember. But anyway, it would have been probably 15 minutes after he was shot, based upon the timeline that I heard at the last trial. But just before I called him, my wife decided she needed to make a stop at a mall. And so I Googled, found a mall 10, 15 minutes away. I said, that's actually better. You can take the children inside. I'll get on the phone with Dan. I'll finalize these things. We'll file them. And I called and he didn't answer. And it was really, really strange to me because Dan was very responsive to me. I remember this happened more than once. He would, even if he was with his children, he would answer and say, I'm with the boys. I can't talk right now. And he'd hang up. And that's really what you would get from Dan. But he would answer. And so for him not to answer, it really kind of unnerved me a little bit. I was like, okay, is he getting cold feet? And I believed that Wendy was still like manipulating him. Dan didn't want to have this awful relationship. He had a new girlfriend he was very happy with. She's very successful, beautiful woman. I mean, he was happy in that regard. So I think he wanted to try to have some normalcy over there. And so I worried that she could prey on that and manipulate him. And so I'd actually told him too, going back to your point about family law, people making false allegations in order to gain a tactical advantage in family law cases. I had actually told him because I knew that they had met at a park and discussed, the kids and one of the issues they had going on. And I told him, I said, I don't want you around her at all. Dan, if I find out you're around her, I'm going to quit this case because I firmly believe that she's capable of making a false allegation against you of some battery or slapping her, kicking her, whatever. And then they're going to use that to get you charged. They're going to file for an injunction. And then they're going to use all of that as collective leverage to get what they want, which is the children removed back down to Miami. And he said, okay. And I didn't believe him, by the way, when he said, okay. I still felt like he could do it. So that was where my mind went when he didn't answer and he hadn't called back like right away. I started thinking she got to him and she convinced him not to file this today because her lawyer knew I was filing on that day. And I was thinking to myself, I shouldn't have gone and told him, because I should have just done it. And then by like 2:30 or 3, I still hadn't heard from him. And that was when I honestly started to get angry. I was like, he's wasting my time now. Like, don't bring me in and ask me to give you advice if you're not going to follow my advice. I'm not trying to sound callous, but that's honestly how I was feeling at that moment. And then I got a phone call from a police officer at the Tallahassee Police Department who I had worked on stuff with, and she was in my phone, knew her by first name. And so I said, hey, Annie, like, what's going on? I just answered kind of nonchalant. And she said, how do you know Dan Markell? I was like, what? She said, how do you know Dan Markell? And I literally rocked back in the seat. And then I was like, she's in violent crimes. Annie works in violent crimes. Wendy's done it. She's accused Dan of some sort of nonsense. And I said, he's my client. I want to talk to him right now. And she said, you can't. I said, yes, I can. I represent him right now. I want to talk to him right now, Annie.
Boy.
And she said, you can't, because something really bad has happened. And as soon as she said it, and I've said it before, and I know it sounds totally weird, but I knew at that moment they had killed him. Just, I don't know if it was the tone of her voice, if it was the words. I don't know if Dan reached down and spoke to me. I don't know what it was, but I knew at that moment they had killed him. And it was crazy.
And you've said twice now they. I mean, when that flashed through your mind, who was they?
I mean, I knew the family in general. I knew Wendy didn't go do this herself. I mean, not that she wouldn't be involved in it, but I knew it would have been a collective involvement. And I certainly suspected Donna. I didn't even know much about Charlie. When Dan had spoken about him, and I remember Dan just kind of describing him as odd. But we didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about Charlie. So I wasn't thinking about him, but I was definitely thinking Wendy and her mom and, probably others.
Yeah. And the last thing you had said to her attorney on June 24th, going on and hold on to that doorknob, was, I'm filing on July 18th. That's also what sticks with him, that I'm filing on July 18th. And I can't imagine an attorney not relating that to their client. I mean, did you ever have a conversation with her attorney after this happened?
Very strange conversation. I like him. He's a good man and very good attorney. So I don't want it to come off like I don't respect him, because I totally respect him. But I was sitting in my office, and I don't know when it was. To me, in my mind, it was like a week after we got back from the baseball tournament. So it was 2 weeks after the murder. And I was in a back conference room. And I was supposed to be working on a case. And I was staring at the wood floor. I remember it. And the sun was shining on the wood floor, and I was just staring at the floor, thinking about Dan being killed. And I couldn't stop thinking. I was like in a haze. And the receptionist like buzzed the conference phone, or the phone in the conference room. And it kind of like startled me back out of my stupor. And she said, there's somebody on the phone for you. It's a doctor's office in Miami. And I was like, why is a pediatrician's office in Miami calling me? So I was like, okay. So I get on the phone. Young lady said, are you Dan Markell's attorney? And I said, well, I don't even know how to answer that right now. I think by then we already filed like the notice of death and everything out. I was like, I don't know. Yes, I am. I said, yes. And so she said, okay, well, we need to get your authorization, because the mother wants to have the children seen at our office. And I said, so then I was like, well, shit, excuse my language, but I was like, what am I going to do here? And I said, look, if those children need treatment, you have my authorization. Whatever it's good for, I don't know, but you got it full 100%. And she could tell I was kind of panicked. And she said, oh, no. There's nothing wrong with them. They're fine. The mother just wants to change the pediatrician from Tallahassee to our office down here in Miami. And I was just gobsmacked. They've done that to me a lot in this case. Just when I think I can't be surprised by these people, they surprise me again. So I was just like, oh my Lord. Like, I'm sitting here in my office, supposed to be working, and I can't even focus on my work because I can't stop thinking about Dan being murdered and how did this happen. And she's out just running errands like it's nothing. And I just was blown away. And then it was probably like 20 minutes later that Jimmy called me. And he said, Stephen, that they weren't supposed to call your office. They were supposed to call my office. And he said that was a mistake. And he said, I'd appreciate it if you didn't say anything to the investigator about this. And I said, Jimmy, you don't know me if you think I'm not going to tell Craig Isom about this. That's happening.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Right.
Isom,
right.
the primary investigator in the case with
Yes.
the Tallahassee PD. So do you think that the relaying of that date impacted the murder?
I mean, it clearly didn't initiate it. They were already plotting before then. But, I have to wonder. I certainly did for a long time before I found out, the backstory. For years, I carried it around thinking that was why it happened that day, solely because of me. And at that time, I believed that, I didn't know that they had already come up and tried to kill him in June. You know what I mean? So it was haunting for me. But I mean, I do believe it played a role, and maybe I don't know. I don't like to think that way, but I think it played some role.
Yeah. And you said that they had done this kind of backstabbing to you before. What did you mean by that? When you got the call from the pediatrician's office, because you've been in the case, for about 6 weeks now, 7 weeks before he's killed?
Yes, ma'am. They just
You can call me Linda. It's okay, ma'am. I always think is the kiss of death. That's me. I'm old. I'm dying. I'm in the coffin.
My parents, man. I grew up.
Stop being no politeness here.
It was just a lot of scummy things, like the diamond ring. This was another reason why I decided that I was going to help Dan. He told me at that first meeting that his uncle Laser was like very, very important in his life, like almost like a second father to him, to Dan. And he had a Holocaust diamond that he gave to Dan for the engagement ring. And when they divorced, Dan, obviously their family wanted that ring back. And she, at a deposition, she testified under oath she was going to return it to him. Okay. She hadn't yet. Then to turn around and still never returned it, never gave him, and it's just things like that. And then, like when you find out about the emails and she's talking about converting them to, to the Catholic faith and dressing them up in Hitler Youth uniforms. I mean, it's just like over and over again, these people find a way to up their level of evil. And you think at some point there's going to be a ceiling on it, but apparently there is no ceiling on the amount of evil these people are possessed by. So
I think the jury is seen by that. So did you get to watch the Linda Bailey testimony? So I guess I have two questions. Do you know her, since you said that family law, and I agree with you, is usually a pretty small practice in different counties and different courts. And if you did, or learned about or read it, what did you think about?
And she was the expert that testified on behalf of the defense on the family law issue. I'm sorry.
Right. That this was just a run of the mill. It was $80,000, no big deal. No one was upset. Type of situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they killed him. So for me, that probably means it was contentious. I don't know. I mean, Linda and all her expertise, I mean, she can draw whatever conclusion she wants. But when your side kills my client, I feel like that's confirmation that it was a little bit contentious, probably.
That's probably the best answer that anyone has given who's watched Stephen.
Yeah, Georgia probably could have used that. Ms. Kappelman could have used that as a button to her cross-examination, although she did a fine job. Were you surprised to just, as to Ms. Bailey, how recalcitrant she was, just so entrenched on issues that a human would understand are emotional? No, not that emotional. They worked it out themselves. It wasn't emotional. It just seemed odd to me, almost like somebody who doesn't really work with people very much, and yet that's what she does.
Yeah, I only saw snippets, but I saw one snippet where she was refusing to admit that just divorce in general is emotionally charged. And Georgia was like apoplectic over it. And Georgia doesn't get apoplectic. Georgia doesn't have emotions. So I thought it was obnoxious. My wife's a lawyer and she watched it. I was still maybe going to have to testify, so I didn't watch. And, but my wife gave me a full report after that. It was just gross.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let me ask you about the trial.
Gross is a really good word for the testimony.
Yeah,
I say it's an understatement. I say you're being kind, Stephen.
Yes, it was icky already. So for what you do know about the trial, I'm assuming maybe you've gone back and looked at some of it since you learned you weren't going to be a witness. Have you learned anything from this trial that changes your opinion as to Wendy's involvement, either made it less likely or more likely?
Yeah, there were some things. First of all, that text that she sent to Charlie that was deleted, the sweet text, that's intriguing to me. One of the things that I don't know if it was, I kind of heard it, that the true meaning of gibbers came about.
Right.
Yeah. The Jew in boots thing.
Jew in boots. Yeah. That she's testified now multiple times had no meaning. It was just a
silly name. Just a silly name.
Silly name she came up with to make him less dangerous, or whatever her stupid testimony was. That just shows you that she is just a prolific liar. I mean, if her lips are moving, she's lying. That the chances are. That one really offends me, because one of the things that I respected about Dan the most was undoubtedly the father that he was. I mean, he was such an amazing dad. I've said it before, and I mean it sincerely. I'm not saying it just to be nice. He inspired me to be a better father. He made me realize that I don't take advantage of the time I have with my children the way I should. I'm not present the way I should be. I don't take advantage of every opportunity, and I still don't. And don't live up to Dan's standard, but he certainly made me aware of it. And the first part of solving a problem is recognize you have one. But the second thing that I really admired about Dan was his faith. You meet a lot of people that claim to have faith or, claim to be, have some sort of spirituality. And then you watch them and you're like, they talk the talk. Do they really walk the walk? And to me, which is almost worse than just being, totally atheist. But gosh, he was so devoted to his faith. And to me, it made him beautiful. It was like one of the things that made him so amazing and incredible. And for them to mock that, like all the way down to that level, that granular level, it just makes me just disgusted.
Why do you think they did that at some point? Because I assume that one of the reasons they liked Dan Markell is because the Adelsons were Jewish and Wendy was then dating a nice Jewish man who could be a professor and they'd have kids and there'd be no issue. And then all of a sudden they're berating him with the most grotesque of gibbers, just grotesque, and then lying about it, in my opinion, just like yours, about, oh, that's just a name we gave him,
Yeah, I don't really have a good answer for you on that question. It's this case has several issues that I stay on a hamster wheel of trying to figure out, and I have for 11 plus years. And that's one of those issues that I just can't really land on a good answer, other than Donna just hated him so, everything about him. And so that was such a big part of Dan that they had to hate it that much, but it's totally crazy. I mean, because they purport to be, Jewish. I understand that there are levels of faith and orthodoxy, but to go to that level where you talk about Hitler Youth and stuff like that, I mean,
that's sick.
Wow.
Yeah, it's sick. So do you think Wendy's going to be arrested? And if so, when would that happen? Sooner rather than later?
I think she will. And I think it'll be within the next few months. I believe that they'll be getting the grand juries. I mean, that case, I think, highlighted that you have to suspend a lot of disbelief to land on the conclusion that Wendy didn't know about this beforehand. The television, those children didn't break that TV with a remote control. That did not happen. Forcing Jeff Lacasse to sit there and watch a movie on this broken television, like clearly just trying to drill down on an alibi. Then making sure that Jeff was going to be in town, so anxious to figure out, how did Donna get Dan's license plate and car information and her day planner down in Miami? So for me, there's no doubt that Wendy knew about it beforehand, and she was aware it was going to happen, and she told Jeff that a week before. He testified to it, that time it wasn't a joke, that it sent chills down his spine, so much so that he reported it to another colleague who came in and confirmed that happened. So yeah, it's time for Wendy to face the music, and I don't take a lot of glee out of that, because I can't imagine what those poor children have already endured. But Dan deserves, and the Markells deserve, a full measure of justice.
How about Dan? I assume obviously talked about Donna and the control and the intertwining of Donna and Wendy. What about Harvey? What did he say, if anything, about Harvey?
He didn't even speak about Harvey that I can recall, other than what he did for a living. And I think, from what I've seen, it certainly seems like Harvey's kind of a pacifist. He just kind of goes along, with whatever Donna plans. But it was clear Donna was the shot caller in that group.
I've labeled her in the show Madonna Adelson for Ma Barker, and John Gotti as the Don, that nothing happened in that family, that she was she put the capos out there and the lieutenants, but that she was in charge of that family. That's how it came off from me, the way Georgia presented the case this time.
I think that's
I know
accurate.
you didn't see it, but
I think it's 100% accurate. That's who she was. She was like in charge.
Yeah, and you could tell through the course of this trial, and when convicted, that that's not how Donna planned it. That was not, something she controlled, right? I get the feeling. Tell me what you think about this, Stephen. That initially, okay, they're going to be in Tallahassee. It's a career move. It'll be short term, and then they'll be back down here in Southern Florida where they belong. And then that didn't happen. And when that didn't happen, that's when all of these the plotting and the mischievousness, the evil, escalated to the point that it did. Does that sound plausible to you?
Yes, that was kind of my perception as well. That FSU's law school really kind of boomed right before they hired Dan. We kind of went top tier. We had a dean Dean Widener, who really did a remarkable job of recruiting top flight professors and building the esteem of FSU's law school. So I think in some respects that kind of set up the situation for Dan, because at that point, for him to make the next logical leap, it was going to have to probably be something far more substantial than FSU or Miami or any law school in Florida at that time.
Yeah, so, I heard he was targeting Yale or Harvard. That's where he was wanting to be.
And I could believe that. Now, if you told me, you came to me and said Dan wanted to teach at Harvard, I was, of course he does. Who doesn't want to teach at Harvard? But it was going to take a substantial leap to really justify. Anything else would look like you went sideways or maybe even down from FSU. And so that was why it was going to take more time. I mean, Dan was going to get there. I have no doubt. I mean, I'm not sitting here thinking that he was going to stay and he was going to die an old man in Tallahassee. That wasn't going to happen. Yeah. He was going to be, at Harvard or Yale, but he was going to have to publish and speak for probably 15 years, and really kind of, to really build his resume to the point where they came calling. So I think you're right. Yeah. And then when Wendy realized that, she was like, no, I'm not staying in Tallahassee for 15 years. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's so Sui Generous. She's one of our loyal viewers. She said she's a proud FSU graduate.
Oh,
yeah, senseless logistics, shaking my head wide. And my partners also have their kids are in FSU too. Cool. Down there, my law partners. So everyone is very proud. But yeah, the why, because let me ask you this: have you done other now divorce family law cases, or has this is this
soured you on the family law?
Not just. I mean, I impaled your brain. I mean, with horror, I guess.
Yeah, I won't do a contested anything divorce. I've done some mutual, agreed upon, some with children, some without, where they agreed on the child support and all the assets, division, all of that. I've got one of those going right now for a friend, but it's for a friend too. Like you're not going to call my office and say you have a family law case and I'm going to be like, okay, let's talk. No, I'll refer you to my friends who do family law.
And you haven't testified in any of the trials, right? I'm gathering that.
I testified at Charlie's. Yeah.
Oh, you did testify at Charlie's. Okay, I must have missed it. Aaron Penner wanted to know, Mr. Webster testified in these trials before, I believe. Has he testified to all the details he shared here? Were you called in for that or just for the timeline?
Basically, they just kind of they didn't want me for the timeline. They really wanted me just to, I think, to push back against what, what Charlie was positing, that it wasn't an acrimonious divorce. They ran that same flag up the flagpole. They wanted to push back on that, and I think they wanted me to humanize Dan a little bit more. Talk about him as a father and as just a person, as opposed to just all the evidence that focused solely on the case. So that was really all my testimony was in the first case. And they were like trying to act like there's no duty to keep your client informed, and that was the other thing the state wanted me to talk about, to push back on, because they were trying to act like there's no reason to think Wendy even knew her lawyer was filing all these things, and she didn't even know her lawyer had filed a motion for contempt. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, remember, this is Wendy who didn't know what a stipulation was. That was their testimony. I don't know. Hey, Stephen, I know when we contacted you earlier, I said 30, 45 minutes. I will say I was not under oath at that time. So if you can stay for a few more minutes, we'd love it. But I don't want to.
I just wanted to make sure I could tell my wife kind of like.
I'm actually. What kind of law does your wife do? I mean, I would love to know.
She was a prosecutor with me and with Georgia, and Kathy Ray and Jackie Fulford. They used to call them the Skirt Mafia back in the days. And then she has been working now for 15 years with the Police Benevolent Association. She's the general counsel for the Florida Police Benevolent Association.
Great. I love this, a successful, another female lawyer. So generous again. Evidentiary videos that weren't shown are very revealing. Wendy's next and soon. Thanks, Linda Mike. I think you should say thanks to Mr. Webster, Suey, generous. I know you did before that, you know, and everyone thinks that you are an amazing gentleman, and all. Obviously you are.
Let me ask you about your client's family. You know, I met them at court when I was down there, and you know, people, their hearts break for these grandparents. What's the latest? What can they do? What's happening there?
You know, they have so much grace. It's what I always land on with the Markells. Their grace is just something to idolize. You know, to lose your son like this and to have this tragedy befall you, then to have your grandchildren ripped away from you, then to have their names changed. I mean, it's just like, how much can these people endure? And then when you're around them, it doesn't matter. Like, they're still sweet, and they have, you know, kind of a serenity that I don't even have. And that's just all I can say, is they're just incredibly graceful people. And it's probably rooted in their faith. But they're just beautiful people. I mean, it's one of the other things that hurts so much about this, you know, because I probably wasn't going to get to know them. And to now know that those beautiful people had this horrible thing happen to them. I mean, it's just,
I know the Markel Act, which was passed, I think it was a year ago, really only kicks in if, in fact, one of the parents is convicted for the murder of the other.
Yes.
But when that does happen, the Markells would have a presumption that they have some right to visitation, possibly even custody. But that doesn't really, those issues haven't kicked in yet. So is there anything they can do now to I guess they have some very supervised short-term visitation? What exactly do they have, and can they do something to get more with those boys?
I'm not aware of any vehicle that's available for them right now. And, you know, there's some concern, you know, there's some case law, Supreme Court case law out there. I think it was Scalia that had penned once upon a time, and it may have been like a concurring opinion or dicta, not necessarily primary part of the holding, where he basically just said grandparents don't have any visitation rights. I think it was Troxel versus Glanville or something like that. And so, you know, it's even the Markel Act is, I'm sure at some point, if it's ever enforced, is going to be attacked.
And you said that you wanted to keep Dan's memory alive, and we've been doing these shows. Michael Bryant's been down there. We've been covering all these. We've been covering all of the trials, and we always have a picture of Dan Markell. Try to in our thumbnails, because you're absolutely right. This is about Dan Markell. Two things. The first is, did he know that the family was trying to change the name of the kids? I guess that's the first question. The second question is what do you want everyone to say when they go out into the masses here, since we are, you know, we're like, let's call this the sanctuary of Dan Markell, to tell people about Dan Markell as you know him?
He never mentioned to me about them changing the names. And if he had mentioned, I would have remembered that. So he must not have known about that. That would have made me crazy. And, which isn't a far trip probably, but when people talk about, when you think of Dan, first and foremost, as I've said here, you really can't imagine the father that he was to those children, how much he loved his children. You know, I just think about it all the time. Like, I mean, he would go, when Wendy decided to take them to school, he would go and spend his lunch hour there with the children. I mean, look, I did that for my daughter when she was in elementary school, probably 15 times over the course of, 5 years. I mean, Dan would do it 15 times in a month if Wendy would have taken the kids 15 times to school. He was the greatest father, and to have that taken away from those boys is a horror that I will never come to peace with. Having a loving parent like that is one of the greatest blessings anybody can have. And to have that taken away, it's just an unimaginable, tragedy. And he was a man of faith, like I said. He was an academic, obviously. I mean, incredibly bright man, but his focus was on those children, and that was what Dan Markell was. He was a father.
Let's hope that one day they see that and they recognize it, and that the alienation has been so great by time, distance, and family, that the kids, because I always say the kids are the ultimate victims here, no matter what. They're always the ultimate victims.
Yeah.
Wow, it's a lot. I never knew Dan Markell, obviously, but from your stories and others I've read and heard, I think you guys were a great match. Now that we've spent some time talking with you, and he was lucky to have you. Little did you know it was going to end as it did, but good to have somebody in his corner, as you were, and as you still are. So,
yeah. Well, in that regard, I think it's important to say, shortly before he was killed, I got a big paper case in, which was kind of surprising for me. And I called Dan and I said, I can't believe this, but I really need to get a law clerk. And I didn't expect to have a law clerk, that kind of early on in my firm. I said, but I can't justify going through all these papers at my rate. And so he said, I know just the man. And he gave me Louis Jean Baptiste's number. I called him and hired him on the phone. I didn't know it, but at the time, Louis was changing the oil in an old Ford Explorer that had been passed down through his family about 3 different times. And he changed my life forever by introducing me to Louis. Louis is like a brother to me. People on, some of your viewers probably have seen us at various points together. I love him like a brother. He loves me like a brother. My children love him like a father, an uncle. And Dan delivered that into my life right before he was murdered. So thank you, Dan.
Oh, gosh. The effect that he seems to have on your life and everyone's life. Yeah, there's Webster and Baptiste. You take a look at the website I was looking at today. I do have to ask you one off-topic question. I know you have a beautiful, gorgeous picture of a cow in your office when I look at it. Why? What's that represent? Is that a gift?
Because that's where the bull stops.
That's where the bull stops. Oh, great. I knew you'd have an answer.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're going to come in and try to BS me as a client, you're going to know.
All right.
You're going to tell me the truth. You're going to give me the whole truth. We're going to have a relationship built on honesty. So
very good. That's as I say, that's doing the right thing. And you could just tell, sir, that that's kind of how you roll, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so
sir.
We'll keep in touch if you don't mind. Who knows? There may be more to come on this.
One can only hope.
Yep. Okay, sir. Take care. Appreciate it.
Hope to meet your wife someday too on the
Yes.
show. Maybe she can come on.
Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Thank you,
Bye,
sir.
you guys.
Bye.
Just amazing. But
Cool guy.
I have to do some business. Kay Schmidt had gifted 5 Justice Serve TV memberships.
Thank you, Kay Schmidt.
Got them. And of course, Joey Kane, one and all, another Justice Serve TV 2 memberships tonight. And all of you in the chat got those because you have to be subscribed. You have to hit that subscribe button, like, share, notify. If you're not a subscriber, you don't get those. They're allocated randomly for people that are subscribers. So you have to be in a subscription. You have to smash that subscribe button. But
yes.
boy,
or put some DNA on there, as they say.
Yeah, talk about a smashing lawyer, an amazing lawyer, amazing person.
We're so lucky to meet people like this, right? That do our profession proud and that are good people and that, as I say, do the right thing. I think most people believe, as Stephen does, that sooner rather than later, Wendy may be up. And it's funny, of the things he was mentioning, I think 4 of them were of the 5 we talked about yesterday. Our list of the 5 most powerful things not coming directly from her lips. A lot of that stuff, but that's not going to be useful.
And then a lot of you would ask Michael to check to look at the previous indictments. Let me just take a look at this, okay? This is actually not the indictment. This is the probable cause affidavit to arrest Donna Adelson. It does not allow you, just let me tell you that when it talks about the Confederates, right? It does not say, it specifically says Charles Adelson and or Catherine Magmanoir and or other persons to commit first-degree murder. It doesn't set out specifically either Wendy or Harvey, and then the same with the indictment. If you look at the indictment of Donna Adelson, and it tracks the previous indictments, basically. It says that, let me get rid of the Joey Kane, maybe some, Missy, could you get rid of the Joey Kane thing?
Sorry, Joey.
No, I gotta let you go down
Joey.
because
Sorry.
I can't read this. That with regard to the conspiracy as count 2, did agree, conspire, combine, or confederate with Charles Adelson and/or Catherine McBanois and/or other persons to commit.
What's the date on this? Do you have a date on this document?
They're in 2023. This is the indictment of, I don't know specific. I did when I cut it.
Okay, just curious because what they would do for
this is the indictment. This was the indictment, and then previously was the probable cause affidavit for arrest.
and what they would do is basically regurgitate this document and put in Wendy's name,
Right.
and leave Donna's in there. And thank you very much, November 13th. And then which was the day she was arrested. That was the Jetwave day, as I recall.
Yeah, the arrest warrant. So I just wanted to point that out, that sometimes you don't have the state's not going to show their hand when it has other co-conspirators. Now, to making account is a potential for Bryant and Baden to cover Boy's civil trial. Let me just put that aside for one moment, if I could, to make it count. And I say that because if you recall, at one point there was an objection to a hearsay objection. There was an objection on hearsay by Attorney Z, I like to call him, on behalf of conversations that I think were going on between Donna and I don't remember who, and
Wendy or Charlie, probably.
Wendy or Charlie, and the judge ruled this is a conspiracy. Hearsay does not apply. And I just want to remind everybody that one of the reasons you indict for a conspiracy and you indict specific co-conspirators, especially when you're going up the ladder, is because in a conspiracy you can get the hearsay of what one person said in. Whereas if you don't indict for that conspiracy, you may not be able to get those conversations, for instance, between Donna and Charlie in. I think even one of them had to do with, maybe I'm wrong, it had to do with Harvey, but I could be wrong about that. But I don't think anyone even objected to that, quite frankly, and all. And then we can ask, let me just, to make it count, is there potential for Bryant and Baden to cover Thorough Boy's civil trial, hoping that mass press pass has come in?
Yeah. Let me see. Is that, I'm looking around and I don't see it. Jennifer.
But we try to cover it. We're going to be up there for the
I think we will be up there on the 24th for the next hearing. We reported yesterday that the documents that have been so hush-hush that everybody in the world has are still impounded, but that Ken Mello is out, so he will be either witness at trial or perhaps deposed ahead of time. So the short answer is yes, we'll be covering it if it actually goes forward. I still have hope that somebody will, get some sense in their brains and all of those things will go away, but I can't count on it. So,
and then my sister's in the chat. What a great guy and a great lawyer. I think we all agree that. Now, how do I remove this document? I said, there it is. Hey, I did it. I mean, you should be proud of me.
I am so proud. What day is this? It's a red letter day for Justice Serve TV.
I loaded assets in. I posted them.
Well, when you loaded, I said, loaded where? What? Because that's stuff I would normally be doing. And oh man, I feel a burden lifted off my shoulders. Hey, before we leave, a stray bit that has been laying around on my desk, and I want to get rid of it. So I'm going to remember we talked about Porsches long ago. We were talking about Porsches. And I said I had a picture of mine with, that was before I sold it. There it is.
Oh, that looks like mine.
There
mine
it is.
The four-seater, though. It looked exactly
the
like
Cabriolet. Well, this is technically a four-seater. I mean, there are two seats in the back that you could put people.
That's my car.
Yeah.
That's
well, I mean, there's only so many Cabriolet Carreras. The 911. They're all they have flop-down seats in the back. I used to say they're great for kids or groceries or people you don't like.
I'm going to find
in the back and they have to sit with knees like this.
I'm gonna find my picture tomorrow when we're doing our chatter where I have we're like 4 or 5 girlfriends in and the dog. yeah, and show you that you can squeeze in if you want to. Of course, my Porsche. The best part was when I went to Home Goods up in Massachusetts, and it was near Halloween, and they were having a sale, and there was a skeleton, and the skeleton could not fit in
So you had normal. It like riding in the car.
Yeah, so I had separated out his top from his bottom, and I had the top in the front seat of the car, and I'm driving down the highway with the top down, and there's a skeleton in the passenger seat. People are beeping at me. Hi, how you doing? So that's what I did with mine.
That I'd like to see that picture. Can I see that picture?
I don't think I took one because I was driving. That was the problem.
Of course.
Donnie Not Wahlberg.
Thank you, Donnie Not Wahlberg.
Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed that. This was a late edition today, and we had it was very nice of Mr. Webster to come on. We had a delay what we intended to do tonight, which is there any evidence that could suggest that Harvey
has some culpability? And when we get into it tomorrow, we'll see how it's slightly different. Right. Not that I haven't found some evidence suggesting he knew beforehand, but I think people would agree most of what he seemed to know was after the fact. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. And then later in the week, we've got a few other things happening.
We have a comments show that we're going to be posting on Friday, and we're going to be doing obviously we're going to do more little videos dealing with the Portland trial, the Mellie trial, as now will be left just the Mellie trial, and also with the terrible situation that we just talked about. That's Irina Zaruska. And then we also are going to look at, and you can talk about this.
Oh, about the juror that has spoken out, and now there's been another one that's spoken out, but less out there. It's a male, one of the younger. As I said, this jury was so young. From my observations, my guesstimate, there maybe were 50-ish, and the rest were 20s and 30s, a couple in the 40s. Well, the jury foreperson was. I've heard two different ages, so all I will say is upper 20s.
I heard 32 with kids.
I heard 26. So,
but whatever.
Like I said, upper 20s, young by comparison to most. We think of most jurors with a lot of retired people, and and then a young man has now spoken out as well. So anyway, because she has been out there and has so much stuff, we've read her comments. We thought we'd just share some of her actual video presentation. She seems to be much more comfortable just sharing it on Instagram or whatever TikTok, source.
A lot of TikTok.
So we'll give you our observations on her observations. Because
we're probably going to have
an interesting jury foreperson.
So we'll probably have 2 full shows that will run on 6 o'clock Thursday and Friday, and then we're going to have 2 videos smaller videos dealing with these cases, and then
the 5 Harvey thing tomorrow night.
And the 5 Harvey thing tomorrow night. So busy week here at Justice Served TV, and we thank you all for staying with us, because believe it or not, it takes a lot. And I know the emotion of, we all wanted to jump in there with questions for Mr. Webster, right? Because he's just so fabulous. But I think we got the most important thing that he told as he held that doorknob going out of the office. July 18th, we're filing these requests for admissions. It's not a motion, requests for admissions. And quite frankly, according to him, we didn't specifically ask what they were because they haven't been filed, right? They're still under attorney-client confidence, haven't been filed, although the state probably has them. But he didn't care whether Wendy Adelson admitted or denied, because either way, he thought that he had her, that she was doomed, so to speak, and that it could affect her law license and the chips had to fall where
fraud will do that. Fraud will affect the law license. And so he believes she was hiding assets, which is the biggest no-no of any when it comes to a dissolution. If you're not upfront about that stuff, if you're hiding it from the other party, number one, it affects the divorce. But number two, if you're an attorney, anything you do that reflects on your honesty or lack thereof, that's, as we say, ticket-taking material.
Yeah.
So,
is
that a motivation to step up the killing? I mean, that's ultimately the question, and he wasn't sure whether it did or didn't. But I think it's safe to say it didn't help.
It didn't help.
Didn't help.
Right. He thought he didn't know at that time about the June attempt or the June trip, but this certainly didn't help. And it was miraculously July 18th that he told the attorney that was the deadline. And I guess one could say it was a deadline.
And that it's chilling that he was making. He spoke to Dan Markell that morning, and then when he followed up, it was within 15 minutes of the shots that killed this man.
Horrible case. And I know everyone is presumed innocent, especially if they have not even been indicted. But whoever is responsible for this savage, brutal assassination of Dan Markell deserves whatever is coming.
Every one of them. All right, then. Have we said hit the like and make your comments and do all of that? Do that?
Yes.
Comments are very good.
Please do comments both before or after. I know I said for people to do comments, and somebody posted about 100 thumbs down or something.
Fine. Okay. I'm all right with that.
That helps us. Keep doing that. That helps us.
I would like a little more explanation. A little bit more.
We're talking about Wendy being possibly liable or responsible.
Yeah, I couldn't. That was for the show about the 5 things that was from last night.
So was that
last night? thumbs down to, it wasn't to your lipstick. We know that. It was definitely not that. But was it to me, to us, to the subject? I don't know. So
I don't know. Was it a
comment
good
with just, just a couple of syllables. You don't have to go crazy, but emojis by themselves, maybe not that helpful. All right. So tomorrow we will continue. I'm Michael Bryant, and that's Linda Kenney Baden, and this is Justice Served TV. Hey, try to do the right thing.